then, and decided that we needed to make this a little bit more official, and so we started the Presbyterian Older Adult Ministry Network. And as I said, it's still going strong. We are part of the Presbyterian Mission Agency, along with APSI and UKirk and PCCCA and a couple other groups. You can visit and find out more about POAM at poamn.org. And so I advise you go on to that and check us out. Okay, so I am going to stop my video, and then I'm going to, what I want to share first are some books that are sort of my response to your last speaker. Annie had sent me some of the materials from your last speaker. And so I really wanted to give an opportunity to talk to you about a few books that I think are really great. If you're a reading group, this might be something that you would like to consider looking at. So the first one I'm going to share with you is called What Your Doctor Won't Tell You About Getting Older. And the first title of this book was Treat Me, Not My Age, which I really liked, and I'm sorry that they took that title away. But, and was this, I don't know if this was even mentioned by any of your other speakers about a book that people should read, but it's really, as it says, an insider's survival manual for outsmarting the healthcare system. So it really is an excellent book if you're really trying to advocate for yourself and for others in the medical field. And so I just wanted to mention that one. Okay, I'm going to have to be going back and forth with sharing. So then I wanted to show you this book. When Oklahoma turned 100 years old, a woman who was a photographer in Oklahoma, MJ Alexander, went around the state and interviewed 100-year-old people. And she called the book The Salt of the Red Earth. She did all of the pictures are all in sepia tone, so they're really, they don't hide any, you know, she didn't do any photoshopping or anything. There are no wrinkles that are hidden, but they're actual pictures of 100 people that were born at the year of statehood in Oklahoma. This book you can also still get now, and it's really just a beautiful book. And it talks about the wisdom and philosophy of these 100 Oklahoma elders, who a lot of them are Native American as well as others. So I wanted to share that book with you. Okay, this is another one that I'm not sure, again, might have been mentioned to you, but it goes along with what one of your speakers talked about last month. And there's a book called The 50 Secrets of the World's Longest Living People. And it's by Sally Baer, B-E-A-R-E. And it really talks about what she considers to be this, you know, what those secrets are of the people that have lived longest all over the world. It's a delightful read, very interesting. And I often bring up those 50 secrets when I talk to groups, and to see how many, you know, what people think of the secrets and things like that. But it's just a delightful book. And so I wanted to mention that one to you also. And then one other book that I wanted to mention, and this book has been around for a while, but Wendy Lusbader, who wrote this, and she is a gerontologist. And she went around the nation and interviewed a lot of older people to kind of get their perspective about what they thought was worth knowing about being an older person. And what this book does is it really, you know, there are a lot of stereotypical things about people that are older. And this really gets rid of those stereotypes, because each person is very individual about what they think is worth knowing about growing older. And so I just really highly recommend this book. And you can still get it also. I used to give this book all the time to young people, because I think a lot of times young people didn't understand what older people were like themselves, and really looked too much at the stereotypes about aging. And this book really just dispels a lot of those. So I wanted to share that with you. Okay, so now I'd like to get some reactions to those books, if there's any questions that anybody has about those books before I continue. Anybody want to? Let's see if there's a question in the chat. Okay. Oh, good. It's glad to know that y'all have got funds. Those would all be great books to be in your church library. I agree. Okay, well, I will continue then. Okay, so in the book, they talk about 3 relationships with doctors that doctors have with their patients. And one of those is the paternalistic relationship. And that's where the doctor is like a parent, and the doctor knows what's best for the patient, and the doctor knows the best model. And that's one of the ones that he mentions. The second one is the informative relationship, and that's kind of the opposite from the paternalistic. That's when the doctor tells you the facts and the figures, and it's up to you, the patient, to decide what to do. The doctor is sort of your technical expert, and the patient is a consumer, but the patient makes the decisions from the information that they get from the doctor. And the third one is the interpretive relationship. And that's where the patient wants both information and guidance. The doctor helps the patient to determine what they want. What is the most important? They ask the questions like, what is the most important to you? What are some of your worries? And then there's a shared decision that you will be making between the doctor and the patient. And so it kind of goes into the ask. The doctor asks, the patient tells, the doctor asks again, the patient tells, the doctor asks again, and it goes back and forth until they decide, the patient and the doctor, what the best course is. And I bring that up because what I'm going to talk about today is the role of the family caregiver in taking care of somebody who really can no longer speak for themselves because they have dementia, or they have something else going on in their life that doesn't allow them to speak for themselves anymore. And the book was great in telling you how to advocate for yourself and what to say and the different aspects in that way, but it really doesn't speak to those people that can no longer speak for themselves. So I want to end talking about the book with a quote that was on page 260. And he said, "I never expected that among the most meaningful experiences I'd have as a doctor, and really as a human being, would come from helping others deal with what medicine cannot do as well as what medicine can do." So the challenge for caregivers, if they're dealing with somebody with dementia, is to decide what they can do to help the person that they're caring for. And to communicate that to the doctor so that they can have that ask-tell relationship as best as possible. So I am going to go back into my sharing of my screen. And I will be glad to make this document available in the future when so if anybody wants to see it later on and things like that. So what I want you to do is keep in mind all that you read in the book, and I'm going to kind of add another layer, the family caregiver's role when dealing with a loved one who might have a dementia. It makes the dynamics of working with a doctor totally different for the patient and the caregiver. So how many of you, and if you'll put it in the chat, have been a caregiver for someone with dementia? I'm going to stop sharing because I can't see the chat when I'm sharing. So I just want to see how many of you, would you just put in the chat, raise your hand, or just say that you've been a caregiver of somebody with dementia? Okay, I see several hands raised. Okay, good. Okay, so you will know what I am talking about. Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Okay, so taking a loved one to visit a doctor about their mental health is just plain uncomfortable. And if you've had to do that, you know it is. So how do you explain your concerns to their doctor without embarrassing your loved one? How do you let them maintain some respect? What do you do if your loved one strongly denies that there is a problem? And then how do you get them to go to the doctor in the first place? So the first thing that you need to consider is that you need to have conversations early on with your loved ones about the future when they still have all their capacity. Now, not everyone is going to have a dementia. Not everyone is going to have that type of thing in older age, but there are quite a few that do. And so having those early conversations is really great. I know that when my mother was in her around 83, 84 years old, I suggested to the family that we all, my sisters, I have two sisters and my mother, and so the four of us get away, go to a place where we can all sit down and have a great fun weekend, but that we also take time on that weekend to find out what mother's wishes were. And so we did. We sat down with her, and they were very resistant in the first place. They didn't want to talk about those kind of things, but she was very healthy at the time. Everything was going well, and that was the time to do it when we weren't looking at a crisis. And so we sat down and we filled out all those information stuff, and someone just asked, suppose the parent does not want to talk about it. Well, my mother really didn't want to talk about it. And so I just said, you know, if you don't talk about it now, then if something happens so that you can no longer talk about it, then what are you expecting us to do? And do you want to really put that burden upon your kids if you, and if we really don't know what your wishes are? And then I brought up a few examples like what would be in the advance directive and things like that. So, so I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. Okay, so it can be hard to admit that dementia might be affecting your parent. And so, you know, sometimes lost keys, forgotten names, and confusion can seem more like a hassle than a problem. Many dementias are progressive, and so symptoms could start slowly and gradually get worse. Signs of dementia may be more obvious to family members or friends. So there might be some people that are thinking that maybe the person that they're caring for or their loved one is showing some signs of being forgetful. Now, I want to remind you that there are a lot of things that can cause confusion in an individual. It's not just dementia. So that's why it's really important that you go to doctors. So I'm going to start by giving you kind of a list. Now, I'm not talking about COVID times at this point. And I know that's probably what I should be doing. But I'm going to really talk as if COVID isn't around. I can answer some questions about COVID in the future when we, at the end, when we do ask questions and stuff like that. But in normal times, these are some things that I want to suggest that you do. So the first thing you need to determine is who to visit. And so you would want to start with your primary physician. And so your parent goes to a regular primary care physician. That doctor will evaluate their overall health and identify any conditions that would affect how well their mind is working. It is likely that their doctor may refer them to a physician who specializes in the diagnosis and treatment of Alzheimer's or another dementia. And those are 4 different types of doctors that they might mention. It could be a neurologist who specializes in diseases of the brain and the nervous system, a psychiatrist who specializes in disorders that affect mood or the way the mind works, a psychologist who has special training in testing memory and other mental functions, or a geriatrician who specializes in the care of older adults and Alzheimer's disease. So there are several different people that they can speak to if they would like to get kind of a thorough examination in looking at that. So what to bring to a visit for memory loss? So first of all, you need to look at to make sure that you have a list of any changes in their health, including their mood, memory, and behaviors. You make a note of those changes from the last, some of the things that you've observed about their memory, When do they begin having trouble with their memory? How has their life changed since then? And then try to be as specific as possible. You want to talk about a list, you want to list their past and current medical problems. Tell the doctor if any other family member had illnesses that cause memory problems. It's not always, heredity does play a part in persons with dementia, especially Alzheimer's, but it's not always the case. And so you might have one relative that has Alzheimer's, but never knew of anybody else that did. And then you might have your grandmother and your mother, and then aunts and uncles and various people could have Alzheimer's, and then you could never show up yourself as having anything. So it just really depends. You need to be sure that you bring a list of current prescriptions and over-the-counter medications, a list of vitamins or supplements that you take. Be sure to have a clear understanding of your loved one's medical and family history, as I was saying. And be sure you bring a list of questions, a notepad to take notes, and then talk to your loved one about being prepared to answer the doctor's questions honestly and to the best of their ability, because as honest as you are with the doctor will really help along the way in getting the correct diagnosis. Okay, so there's questions that you need to ask about having a memory test, because they might be wanting you to go into further testing. So let the doctor or other medical professionals know if you need additional information or clarification. So you need to ask them about what tests they plan to perform, what does that test involve, how long will the test take, and how long will it take to learn the results, because those are 4 really key things to know. Is the test going to just be a word type of test, or is it going to go as far as maybe having a spinal tap to see if there's a possibility for Alzheimer's? And so there's a whole range of testing that can be done. Okay. As I'm sharing my screen, I can't see the chat, so let me stop sharing for a minute, and then I can go down and see if there's some questions that I need to ask. Okay. Someone said it takes time for the person to get there. My husband was at first in denial, but later realized that he needed the medical advice. I agree. One of the things that is really important to know these days is that the earlier the diagnosis, because they can make some positive diagnosis now more so than ever in the past, but the earlier the diagnosis and the earlier that someone starts on medication, the slower. It doesn't stop the disease and it's not going to cure the disease, but it can definitely slow the disease down. In fact, a woman who is 35 years old can go in and have a spinal tap done, and it can determine that one of these days she has all the markers for having Alzheimer's disease, like her mother and her grandmother had, but she has no sign whatsoever. But she could start on medication at the age of 35 and maybe not ever show signs of dementia at all, because she has slowed the process so much. And so this is just something that's really important to know about. Neurologist has talked about new drugs waiting to be introduced by Biogen. Yes, and there are new drugs every day. The Emory Alzheimer's Disease and Research Center puts on a weekly brain forum. And at the brain forum, they talk about all the different drugs that are being introduced, the different research that's going on. And it's just really great to hear. Do you feel there's a problem with geriatric misdiagnoses? Well, yeah, there is. But oftentimes it's just because people really don't know, and they're trying to eliminate different things that are going on. And so it's probably actually a lot has to do with elimination of what's right and what's wrong. And with dementias, they could say 1 minute that this person has this dementia, and then the next minute they can say that, well, it's not that dementia, we really think it's another dementia, because there still is learning so much about it. And So that's really important to know. Okay, I'm gonna go back to sharing my screen. Okay, so the Mayo Clinic had some really good tips for further along in the disease process and for things to do when you go to visit the doctor. And I was kind of wanted to stress these things since this Being Mortal book is all about, the visit between the doctor and the patient. And then these are really good things for the caregiver to know as they go along this journey with a person that has dementia. So the first thing is to complete necessary paperwork. Early in the course of the disease, it's important to complete the paperwork that assists in future decision-making and care. Make sure the doctor's office has copies. Revisit these documents periodically during doctor's visits as things may change, and that your care decisions and written goals are consistent. And the document should include the privacy release form at the doctor's office that indicates you can discuss diagnosis, treatments, and other medical concerns with other family members. A durable power of attorney for health care, which designates who can make medical care decisions when the person with dementia can no longer able to do so. And then your advance directive and those type of documents that enables a person to make decisions about future care. And again, all of these things can be discussed early on before the dementia has progressed, when the person still has a lot of their cognition and they can talk about it. And so there's a really important decisions that need to be made early on, and will save just a whole lot of problems in the future for folks. I raked leaves yesterday for about 2 hours and got about half done. Our yard is just, we have all these huge, huge oak trees. And so I'm sorry, but it has affected my voice and it's really dried me up. So I'm really sorry about that, but I know I sound really raspy, but I shouldn't have done that yesterday. I should have worn a mask out raking actually, and that would have helped. Okay, so minimize your stress. For some people with dementia, talking about an appointment ahead of time may be helpful. For others, it may be stressful. So again, you have to kind of look at what past experience you have, try things out. If one time it worked one way, then try it that way the next time. If it didn't, then try something else. So to minimize the stress as a caregiver, schedule appointments when possible during the best time of day for the person with dementia. And again, we're not talking about times during COVID because all of this has changed. And oftentimes you aren't even allowed to go in the doctor's office with somebody. I have a friend whose husband has dementia. He is in a dementia care unit in a nursing home, but she is allowed to take him to the doctor's offices, but all she can do is drive him to the doctor's office and then sit in the car and wait for him. She can't even go in with him. And so you can imagine when you're dealing with somebody with dementia, how difficult that is for the caregiver and the person with dementia. That really does depend on you. Anyway, going back to this, allow for plenty of time to travel, bring a friend. If the person is further along in the dementia, bring a friend as kind of a backseat companion or somebody else to kind of distract them. Ask the doctor's office ahead of time if there's a quiet place to wait for the doctor. That can be really important, especially if someone is really stressed out with the doctor's appointments, and being in crowds and with noise and all that kind of stuff really bothers them. Bring a favorite book, magazine, or activity for the waiting time, and then focus on something enjoyable to do after the appointment, such as going out for a treat or something like that. So that can minimize stress for both you as a caregiver and for the person that is dealing with that appointment. Third point was to keep a medication record. Keep a list, be sure you have a list of all the medications, including over-the-counter drugs and dietary supplements, vitamins, and all of that. You might even want to bring a bag of all the prescription and non-prescription drugs with you for a review. And so a complete record should include the name of the medication, the daily dosage, the purpose, the name and the contact information of the prescribing doctor, and then prior medications that you've tried and that you've stopped, because oftentimes you forget about that. So the doctor say, well, what was the person on before? You say, well, I don't remember, but it was a little green pill with a W on it or whatever. Well, that doesn't do the doctor much good. So be sure that you know what the prior medications might be that you've tried. Keep a log of daily medication use. Record any possible side effects, changes in behavior, or problems that may be related to medication use, and then note any missed doses. Prepare a list of questions that you have about any medications or the side effects. If the person with dementia lives in a care facility, ask the staff ahead of time to give you that information, so that you make sure that you have all that key information. Okay, be ready to ask and answer questions. It will save a lot of time for you and for the doctor, and will really help the stress level of the appointment go a lot better if you aren't trying to struggle to remember all the questions. So keep a log between appointments to help the person with dementia or you to answer the doctor's questions. Record changes in memory, mood, or behavior. Make notes of times of days and types of experience that are challenging. If they have a really difficult time with sundowning, that is late in the afternoon, they get really irritated, then be sure to note that kind of thing, and the different things you've had to deal with that have really challenged you or challenged the person with dementia. Before the appointment, write down any questions you have regarding symptoms and behaviors, and then talk to your loved one about that. Saying, when we go to the doctors this time, I'm going to talk to them about the fact that, you seem to be having a difficult time doing this type of activity, or you're having a problem with your balance these days. And so we need to really find out what's going on about that, and kind of fill them in on some of the questions that you're going to be asking, so that they are not taken by surprise. Take notes during the appointment. You might also invite a friend to take notes. If before COVID, you could take somebody with you that would also maybe be able to take notes. If you don't understand something the doctor tells you, ask for clarification. Especially if the doctor prescribes a new medication or adjusts a dosage, be sure that you record the name of the drug, the instructions for taking that. Don't rely on your own memory, because if you're dealing with a stressful time of taking care of somebody with cognition, that you're probably going to be dealing with some cognition issues yourself, because you're under stress at that time and you're trying to remember everything. So, take as many notes as you possibly can. The reason for taking the drug or adjusting it, possible side effects, and then any instructions that you would, when to call the doctor or to stop taking the drug, that are really important. Okay, the next point was to discuss future care. So over the course of the disease, the treatment goals will change, and you'll go through periods of being very flat, where the person will be at the same level of dementia, or their cognition will be the same level for quite a while, and then something might happen that takes them a step down, or they might have a period of really good cognition, and so be sure to through the course of the disease, realize that things are going to change. Discuss with the doctor expected care needs in the short term and long term, and then discussions may include plans for decision about driving, needs for supervision or adult day services. Then as the disease progresses, maybe memory care centers, nursing homes, palliative care, hospice services. So that would be toward the end of the disease, but really some of those difficult conversations and things like that, be sure to keep those in the discussion right up front. Don't just bring them up at the last minute when they should have been discussed a while ago. And talk about these decisions, talk about the decisions that meet overall treatment goals and align with advanced directives. And then ask for recommendations. If you need help, ask the doctor. Tell the doctor what you're dealing with. Be sure to tell your loved one that they need to express some of the problems that they're having, some of the stress that they're having, some of the things that they're having to deal with. And the doctor may refer you to community resources and to several things. They might even mention to you as a caregiver that you might need some respite care, or you might need to join a support group. Right now, I'm facilitating 3 caregiver support groups via Zoom. I had them in place before all this happened. And what those 3 support groups make me realize right off the bat is that, first of all, everybody is dealing with the journey differently. And everybody's situation is different. No two people are alike. But it's you know, as I see people go through difficult times, and especially during COVID, and I realize how much respite care they need. And respite care is an opportunity for people to have a break in their caregiving and have someone else be with the person that they're caring for. Again, that makes it difficult during COVID, but people have been able to work some of those details out, and we can talk about that a little bit. I'll be glad to answer any questions about that too. And then leave with a plan. Write down any instructions or tasks that need to be addressed between now and the next appointment, including appointments or tests that need to be scheduled, details about changes in treatment or care, concerns or instructions to share with other caregivers, and then behaviors and changes in signs and symptoms to watch for. I'm going to stop sharing this screen because I want to show you a checklist that I found. Let me see if there's any other chats.
Pat,
yes.
This is Carol Reeves.
Yes.
I just wanted to let you know there was a question, or actually a statement, that was made. I'm not sure it was answered, and I just wanted to kind of get that in there before you go on to the other ones. Neurologist has talked about new drug waiting to be introduced by Biogen. What about new medications that are waiting out there, and COVID is kind of putting everything in the waiting room, so to speak? Do you hear about that?
You know, when there are new medications coming to the front all the time, and it's really hard to keep up with them. It used to be there were maybe 1 or 2 different medications that people with Alzheimer's, not maybe other dementias, but people with Alzheimer's were able to, you could say, well, are you on this or are you on that? But now it's, are you on 20 different things now? And the combinations of things. And that's what as I said, the ADRC, the Emory Alzheimer's Disease and Research Center, talks about all those different medications that are available now. And as new ones are developed and are passed by the FDA and are become, you know, medications that work really well with people with Alzheimer's or other dementias and stuff like that, then they'll talk about those during that time. That is something, if you are dealing with dementia now and you're interested in that, then I can send the link for that. Those brain forums are every Tuesday afternoon at 2 o'clock, from 2 to 3 o'clock. And they will answer all your questions about dementias. They have different speakers come on all the time. And it really is you really can learn a lot about dementia, and it's very, very helpful for persons that are caring for somebody with dementia. So I'll be more than glad to share that information with folks if you want.
Pat,
Yes.
I retired from dentistry last year, and I had kind of an aging population of patients.
Yeah.
And it's difficult to walk into the operatory and see a list of 15 to 20 medications. Yeah. Sometimes you're even shy about giving an injection. I mean, it's
right.
I just think it's out of hand.
Yeah, well, and you know, the recently Emory started an integrated memory care clinic, and it's a 24/7 clinic. They only take people that have diagnosis of a dementia. It's been about 3 or 4 years now that they started that. And they take care of the whole person. So they're looking at it, you know, they're looking as when you have the flu or when you have a UTI or things like that. And you can call this clinic 24/7, and they know because you have dementia, certain things that are going on in your life and medications. And so they're able to get a lot of that medication, that massive medication under control, because you're only seeing one set of people that are all on the same page with you. You aren't seeing a lot of different doctors under different practices and stuff like that. So that's when I talk to persons that are dealing with dementia and the person that they're caring for. You know, I mentioned this integrated memory care clinic because it really does take care of the whole person and all of what they're doing, and everything that's going on in their health life. And also they have social workers and things like that also. But I've recently had some dental work done, and the doctor really did talk to me about my medications and what I've been on, and for reactions and all this kind of stuff. And I really appreciated the fact that he did. He went through all of that with me. We talked about what some reactions might be. And I don't think I'd ever had a dentist do that before, but I guess I'm older now and it's an important thing to do. But but anyway, yeah, so that is a real concern.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Someone said our presenter last week had a dim view of nursing and assisted living facilities. What is your opinion? They have their place. I think if someone can live safely at home and can be cared for without the caregiver's health being compromised, then I think I think people do better, especially during COVID. That has been just such a really big issue, because I've got caregivers who cannot see the person their loved one, because they're in an assisted living or a nursing home, and because they can't see them now, their person is really going downhill rapidly. And I've had several that have lost their family members, not necessarily to COVID, but some of them have, I think, literally died of loneliness, because they didn't have that backup that they've had. Some of them actually took their person out of assisted living or a nursing home and brought them home to take care of them themselves during this time. And so I don't necessarily have a dim view, but I think you need to really do your homework when finding a facility, and you need to be an advocate for the person in that facility. And when it's not during COVID, you need to visit that person a lot at different times during the day, and you just need to speak up for what's going on. Let's see. Is it okay to ask to talk to the doctor without the patient before or after the appointment? I think that's just fine. Again, if you are caring for somebody with a dementia, then that really might be necessary, especially if the person is having a difficult time communicating themselves, or is getting really stressed out when you talk about them. And so I think you have to consider what's best for you and the person you're caring for. Do you ask the neurologist about a new drug, or should you just trust in them to tell you what they'd advise regarding something new? I would just, do your research again, talk, if you hear about a new drug and you go to the doctor, write it down and go to the doctor and say, I heard about this drug and it says it does this and this and this. And do you think this would be a good drug for my parent? And if not, why? Kind of see if your parent has done if your doctor has done their homework. Some doctors might not be aware of a drug or you can even say, I have a friend whose mother has Alzheimer's, just like my mom has Alzheimer's, and they've put her on this drug, and do you think that would be a good drug for my parent? Again, you have to be the advocate oftentimes for the person when they're dealing with dementia. And if you aren't that advocate, then who are they going to have? And so it's just really, really necessary for you to advocate for them as best as you can. Yes, I have a raised hand somewhere. Someone want to say something?
That would be for me,
Yes.
Alex. You mentioned, I believe you said 3 siblings and that you'd gotten together and had discussions. Yeah. My wife and I have a healthcare power of attorneys and desire for natural death, but we signed all 3 of our children without a priority of order between the three children. On one hand, we see that might bring them together during our declining and final years and create family harmony amongst the three of them. On the other hand, we can see the downside of them disagreeing. Have you had any experience with that?
Yeah, yeah, I have, especially since I do 3 caregiver support groups. And someone comes to my support group and they say, "Oh my gosh, I've got 3 siblings and none of us agree on anything, and we just fight all the time. And boy, I wish I was an only child." And then I'll have an only child on the support group who says, "Boy, I wish I had siblings to help me with this." And so it's back and forth with those kind of things. There are several really good instruments out there to get families talking about having conversations, difficult conversations, and one of them's called even difficult conversations. And then the 5 wishes, that's another one. And so again, to have those conversations early on when your parents are still really have good health, have good cognition, even though they might be resistant to talk about, "Oh, it's so morbid, do we have to talk about death," and stuff like that, and well, yes, you do. I mean, it really is important to get those, if you want your wishes to be, for their children to listen to your wishes, then they really need to start talking ahead of time. And it just really depends on family dynamics. Let's see, I have Alice. Did you have a question?
Well, that was
no, it's me, Alice. They sound alike.
Yeah.
I have had a couple of occasions to be a caregiver, and one of the biggest challenges for me was with my father. And he not only suffered from dementia, he also couldn't hear well and could not see well. He also had a very deep, loud bass voice and came from a different culture and generation than people did. And he would just embarrass the daylights out of me. So one of the things that I think is very difficult is to deal with being embarrassed of that person that you love and you're giving care to. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, and that you just have to kind of try to keep a really good sense of humor throughout the whole thing. I think that's really key, is to try to stay as light as possible, to try to stay as positive as possible, and try to, just try to keep the conversation light and things like that. I mean, my kids have embarrassed me when they were younger. My teenage daughter embarrassed me many times. And so one of these days I told her I was probably going to get back at her when I get to be old. But anyway, so, Okay, so I've got 1026. So I wanted to show you, let's see, your references toward a person with dementia. I'm a second wife. Let's see, I'm a second wife with a husband with the onset of dementia. I'm dealing with stepdaughters and other family. Wow. And I hear that also. When you've got mixed families and things like that, it is a whole new dynamic when it comes to caregiving. And I have several people in my support groups that are dealing with caregiving in that way. And so there are some really good books out there these days on that type of thing. So you might do some Googling on looking in dementia, go to AARP website, they're really good. And so there are several good websites, caregivers.org and caregivers.com, both have also really good articles on that kind of thing. And I'm going to show you just quickly one more screen share that I just want to show you a link. Okay, so I was going to go into the hospital because that adds a whole new level of caregiver stress and things like that. But if you'll see this link, it's from the National Institute on Aging, and it's specifically on tips of going, hospital tips going for dementia caregivers. Talks about emergencies, what to pack, before a hospital visit, what to plan to do, and then during the hospital visit, what you can expect, and then working with hospital staff. So I just wanted to bring this to your attention. and about this website. And again, I will, I guess Annie sends you this document. Is that what you want me to do? Send it to you? Okay. And so you can give it out to people that.
Yeah, could you also, like the caregiver, you know, a few of those resources and the AAR, just all those other ones,
Yeah,
just send me those, the things you've kind of talked about, the different locations, and we can put that out.
Yeah, yeah, I'll do a list of I've got a list of
That's great.
good resources and stuff.
That'll be great. And then we can send out those resources, everyone. We'll try to send those out by email this week with a link to the recording of this video, so that even those of you who want to watch it again or see those resources, and then folks who weren't able to be on this morning can have access to that information also.
Well, and again, I just want to stress, just to end it off, is that, you know, try to have the difficult conversations early on, because if you wait, if you wait until things start to decline with health and things like that, it just makes things so much more difficult. And so if you haven't had conversations with your children yet about your end of life wishes, or if you're caring for a parent that you haven't had a conversation with, then I want to challenge you to make that a priority this holiday season if you're with them, or even Zooming with them now, because I think it's really important.
Thank you, Pat, for your time, for your wisdom, and for the just wise and calm way that you sort of lead us through things that are really, for most of us, often very emotional and difficult. But the way you have presented them makes it seem like we can do this. And I think that's a really helpful. It's really helpful for us to hear it in that way. So I know you all will join me in saying, many people already are, thank you, whether that's the Zoom hands or actual applause. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your expertise with us. We really are grateful, and we'll be grateful to share all of those printed materials as handouts for folks after today as well. So
Okay, thank y'all.
Thank you, Pat.
Okay, y'all have a great day. Okay.
You too. Thank you.
Stay safe and happy holidays.
Same to you.